So hi, welcome to yet another episode of Keysound TV, and again another packed hour that we've got for you. That first little piece that I played was a multi-track arrangement I put together on the Yamaha SX900. There's a little piece called The Way We Were, of course made very popular by Miss Barbra Streisand and composed by that wonderful prolific composer Marvin Hamlisch. You know, sitting down at the SX900 just reminded me how powerful that instrument is for what we would term a mid-price keyboard. They call it the mini Genos because it takes a lot of the technology and a lot of the features from the flagship model Genos. Obviously it's very nice and compact. It's got a wonderful built-in speaker system. So you know, if you're ever thinking of upgrading, the SX900 is well worth a look. And sometimes, I've said it before, we can be guilty of just concentrating on the flagship models, and then when you sit on things like the Korg PA1000 and its equivalent in the Yamaha range, the SX900, you realise how good these products are. So as I said, we've got another packed hour for you. Hopefully a lot of music, some hints and tips along the way. We welcome back our very good friend Andy Carvill. Unfortunately, Mike Hall was going to be with us this time. He's a little bit under the weather at the minute. I think it must be his age. But yeah, no, we wish him well, and he'll be back with us hopefully for the next episode. But while I was working with Andy at one of the Keyboard Cavalcade festivals a few weeks ago, he played 2 or 3 arrangements that he put together on his PA1000 and absolutely blew me away. And like for the same reasons I've just mentioned about the SX900, Andy of course has got a PA1000 and he's concentrated all his efforts onto it. And he's put these multi-track arrangements together, so he's played all the parts, but you're going to hear one of them in this episode, but he has recorded 2 or 3 more for me. So we'll spread them out over forthcoming episodes. But in this particular one, he's going to be doing a little arrangement of I Dreamed a Dream. He will be playing the piano part, but all the other orchestral parts, the bass, etc., Andy's put in. And while Andy was here, I twisted his arm just to sit down with me and have a little bit of a chat, because we do go back an awful long way. And I thought it'd just be interested for you to hear a brief outline of Andy's career up to the current day. So yeah, as always, all that remains for me to say is you sit back, enjoy the rest of the show, and I'll see you a little bit later.
Hello, and it's a great pleasure to be back here at Keysound TV once more. Today's video is a more musical video rather than looking at in depth into product features. This is how to create right hand chords from a simple lead sheet. And now by a lead sheet I mean a single note melody just with some chord symbols. So you've got single notes in your right hand and a chord symbol underneath. You probably watched lots of professional players, and you'll notice that they play lots of chords with their right hands and both hands and doing all sorts of different things. And yes, of course those notes could have come from a very clever musical arrangement, but quite a lot of them use the system that we're going to have a look at now. And I'd just like to introduce a theory to you, which is something just to remember, and that is the use of what we call, or what I call, chord notes. So we're using chord notes, and that's very closely related to chord inversions, and I'll explain both of these theories in just a moment. Now what I've set on my keyboard here is a very simple sort of organ sound, that sort of sound, and just a simple accompaniment down here, not using a style at all. And we're going to be playing a very simple piece of music, you'll know it, called Amazing Grace. And it's in the key of C, and it only uses 3 chords in the left hand, the chord of C, the chord of F, and the chord of G. That's the only 3 chords we're going to be using today. And just as a, if you don't know the piece of music, here we go. This is just the single note version, and I'm playing an octave higher, and you'll see why in a moment, because I don't want to get too muddy further down the keyboard. But I'm going to go up here, C chord, F chord, and back to C. Up to G, G chord, G note. It's an F chord, back to C, G, C. So now what I want to do is I want to fatten out, fill out this right hand. So here's the very simple theory. Whatever notes you're playing with your left hand, you can take and you can copy them underneath the melody note in your right hand. There's a very, very important rule there. There are very few fixed, absolute must-be rules in music. Most things are guidelines. There's lots of guidelines, but one of the most important things is if you're creating your right hand chords, the melody has to be the top note, because actually that's what we hear. And if you don't make the melody the top note, the tune won't sound right at all. Okay, let me explain what I mean. So my first note, my first main note is this C here. Okay, now I'm using a C chord. C chord, as you probably know, is made up of the notes of C, E and G. So I can pinch any of those notes and go down from this C. So I'm going to pinch the G and I'm going to pinch the E, and there's my first right hand chord. Now the melody goes up to E and back to C. So all I'm going to do is swap my C chord around. Yeah? Now the chord changes. The melody note is back to C again, but this time I'm playing an F chord. My F chord, F, A and C are the notes in that chord. So I'm at C this time, so I can pinch the A and the F. So all I've done is I've gone, there's my C chord. Now changing to F with both hands in effect. But my melody note has to be on top. And I've now gone back to C. The melody note is G. That's in the chord anyway. I'm going to pinch the E and I'm going to pinch the C as well. So in effect, I'm playing the same chords with both hands because I'm pinching the notes from the left hand here. Now this is why this is closely related to chord inversions, because all I'm doing really is I'm playing a different inversion of the chord with the right hand. So it's a C chord. I've just got to have C on top because that's the melody. This is an F chord now with both hands. So I've got an inversion in this hand with the C note on top. Just an inversion of F down to C. Up to G chord this time. The melody note is the G, so I can pinch from this hand a D and a B. So I hope that's clear, I'm pinching the notes from my left hand chord and placing them underneath the melody note. It just happens to work out that I'm playing different chord inversions. But there's another more powerful angle to this. If I just played 3-note chords in this very block chord style, it doesn't necessarily sound very smooth. So I can use some different variations. I don't have to play all 3. I could just play 2 notes if I wanted to. Well, which one would you choose then? So if the melody note's C, my chord is C, would I just play the G or would I just play the E? The truth is, it doesn't matter. You can take your pick. I personally would play the E because I just like the spread of the notes better. But if you want to add just the G or just the E, that's up to you. It's fine. So that would be like this. So I've changed my 3-note chord into a 2-note chord. Hope that makes sense. So now I've got 3 options available to my fingertips. I can play just single notes if I want to. I can play just 2 notes if I want to, or I can play 3 notes if I want to. In fact, I could even play 4 notes if I wanted to stretch the chords out and have big enough hands to reach more notes. But it means now that you can actually very simply arrange your version of a tune, in this case Amazing Grace, the way that you want to. So here we go, single note, 2 notes, still 2 notes, 3 notes, 3 notes still, back to 1 note, 2 notes, 3 notes, 3 notes, 2 notes, 1 note. So, important things to practice, very important. Don't just think of your left-hand chords as a certain shape. And I know we all get into that habit. I certainly did for many years in my early years of playing, that a C chord was just that. I didn't really know anything more, it's just that. I didn't really learn until much later that it was actually the notes of G, C and E, and that's not a root position of C. C at the bottom is the root position. But anyway, all of those sort of things. Don't just learn your chords as a shape, learn them as notes, because you can then pinch those notes and put them into the right hand. You can apply exactly the same techniques to every piece of music that you play. Look at your chord, take the notes from there and place them underneath your melody. Small word of warning finally. This will obviously change your fingering and your hand positions quite dramatically. So that's something you will have to practice with your right hand, just to get your hand into a different place so you're able to play these chords. I hope you find that useful. It's a very, very big topic. Sounds simple, and it is simple, but it's big because you need to learn all the notes of all the chords. I hope you find it useful. I hope you have some fun trying that out, and I look forward to seeing you again next time at Keysound TV.
So I just want to take a couple of minutes out just to tell you about a very special event we've got coming up on the 11th and 12th of November. That's a Friday and Saturday. We'll be open both days from 10 till 5, normal work hours. But they promise to be a couple of very special days in that we have called them Yamaha Discovery Days. And I'm so pleased to say we've got our good friend Paul Carman coming down from Yamaha, who will be in store with us for those 2 days. And his job, a lovely job really, will be to sit and demonstrate all of these wonderful Yamaha instruments, right through from the small keyboards to the flagship Genos, the whole Clavinova range. Whatever you want to hear, Paul, Steve and myself will be on hand for those 2 days. But above all, It'll be a fun couple of days. There'll be lots of things going on in the shop. Everybody is welcome to come down. So it doesn't matter what your interests, what your playing ability, pop down and see us, because the last time we did this, the shop was full. We had such a great time, and really looking forward to having Paul with us again. And there is no better person, believe me, to take you through these Yamaha products. There's not a lot he doesn't know about them. So that's November the 11th and the 12th, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pop down and see us. It promises to be a great couple of days. So we're here with you to give you a little tip this time. I'm using the Genos, the Yamaha Genos, but what I'm going to talk about applies to the Genos, the SX700, the SX900, and also the Korg PA series as well. So if you own a Korg, follow this as well, because this will give you a nice little hint and tip as to what you can achieve. We're going to look at a little section here called one touch setting. One touch setting, they are factory registrations that are put together by professional players. So you get some beautifully crafted registrations with all the balancing, all the effects done, etc, etc. So in other words, it's done the hard work for you. And for every rhythm on all the products that I've talked about, we have 4 variations, and therefore it's not a coincidence that each rhythm gives us 4 one-touch settings. Now, if you own a Korg PA product, it's called a keyboard set. On the previous Korgs, if any of you own that, it's called an STS, or a single touch setting. But it's on the later Korgs, it's called a keyboard set. On Yamaha, it's called OTS, or one touch setting. So I can choose any rhythm. So let me go into the ballroom category, and I'm going to choose Moon Waltz. And I always get in the habit of pressing exit, because I always like to work from my main screen when we're talking about registrations. If I press one touch setting 1, I can see it's given us a little jazz casotto. That's a little small accordion. Go to number 2, we've got a mixture of vocal sounds there. In this case, I can see that 2 sections are on, because right 1 and right 2 both have the white background, which indicates that section's on. Go to the next one, and that is just using right 1, and that's the CFX concert, sorry, not the concert grand, the cocktail grand. And we go to number 4, and we've got Keyno strings warm and Keyno strings low mixed together. So that would give us 4 registrations for that waltz rhythm. And you know, in reality, it's lovely that we could have 10 registrations here using the registration memories, but in reality, isn't 4 registration changes often as not enough? I know in the case of my playing, 4 nicely put together registrations is often all the changes you're ever going to need, unless it's something very, very specific in terms of arrangement that you want more little effects. I would say 95% of the time those 4 settings will do. So what I'm going to talk about today is how we can use one touch settings by modifying them to suit our own tastes, rather than having to look at filling up to 10 registration memories for a piece, creating new banks, naming them, etc., which it can be a tricky process if you haven't done it and you're not doing it on a regular basis. So let's look at how we can customize these and store all our own favorites. Now, one thing that both Yamaha and Korg offer with one touch setting is the ability to link that sound there to the 4 rhythm variations. And in the case of the Genos, this is done with a button called OTS link, or one touch setting link. If we put that on, then when I'm on variation A, it will automatically choose one touch setting number 1. As I move to variation B on the rhythm, it will change to one touch setting number 2, and so on. C goes with 3 and D goes with 4. Now that's great, because if you're a home player and you've got your piece of music up and you're concentrating enough as it is on the music, it's great to only have one button to change, but actually it does two functions then, because it builds up the rhythm pattern, but it also builds up and changes the registration. And that's the way these registrations work. And this is a little tip for when you come to the next stage I'm going to show you, which is to substitute some of the sounds that you're not so keen on with some that you prefer. Always be mindful of the fact that one touch setting number 1 needs to be the more gentle of the registrations, if that makes sense, because variation A is the more gentle version of the rhythm style. So variation A will often be bass, drums, and maybe one or two other parts. And obviously, as you go up through the variations, it builds up and it builds up. At no point do you want the right hand to be so heavy and so full that it drowns out its relevant rhythm variation that it's linked to. So we've seen there that in variation 1, there's just a nice little, a cassotto is a very sweet little jazz organ sound. If any of you remember a program, I'm going to show my age now, called Sing Something Simple, which was on Radio 2 on a Sunday afternoon. There was a brilliant accordion player who is still with us, still playing, a gentleman by the name of Jack Emblow, and it was a cassotto that he played on that. If you can think of the theme tune, that is the sound we're looking for there. So as we went through, then it builds up on one touch setting 4 to a much bigger layered string sound, because by that time the rhythm variation will have built up as well. Just one little point to say here. If you don't have the one touch setting link on, now if you have a Korg, that is called style to keyboard set, and if you have style to keyboard set flashing, then that will do exactly the same as I've just shown you with the one touch setting link. So as you go through your rhythms, it will automatically go through the 4 registrations. If you don't have that on, then obviously you can have any combination of rhythm variation with any one touch setting. But even with the link on, if I go to A and I suddenly decide I want to use sound 3, but I don't want the rhythm to change, then simply press one touch setting 3. Why can we do that? Because, and this is important to realise, the link only works one way. So the link is triggered by the rhythm variation. That will trigger the sound change, but the sound change does not trigger the rhythm variation. So you can override the setting. I'm going to choose another rhythm just to show you how the one touch settings will change depending upon the rhythm. I'm going to choose slow bossa. I'm going to press exit again because I need to see the main screen. And I can immediately see that in one touch setting 1 now we've got a smooth tenor sax. Great sound for bossa novas. We go to 2 and we've got jazz guitar clean. We go to 3 and we've got a mixture of strings. So again, notice how as we work through the one touch setting, that registration is building up. And we're going to go to 4. We've got flugelhorn mixed with warm pop horns mixed with flute section. So that's going to be our biggest and fullest sound. Now, I'm going to use these as registrations for me. Now, you may want to change 1, 2 of them, you might want to change all of them for that particular rhythm. In this case, I'm just going to show you an example where I'm going to change 1 of those settings, but just be mindful that you can apply the same rule to any of the other settings as well. I've gone to one touch setting 2, which was jazz clean guitar. In my head, I'm thinking of a piece of music I want to play, and I actually don't want a jazz guitar in this particular case. I'd prefer a flute. So, to change it, we tap the picture of the guitar, I'm going to go into the woodwind family, because that's where we find our flutes. And on page 2, I've got a nice little one there called Jazz Flute. Going to press exit because I want to see that it's registered on my main screen. So yeah, Jazz Flute, it's highlighted in white, so it's switched on, so we're fine. Now I want to store that in number 2. But here's the point, you will not lose the factory setting. You are now creating a one-touch setting of your own. So how do we do it? We use the memory button that would normally be used for storing registration memories. And here's how we do it. We press the memory button and we then press the one-touch setting that we want that flute to store into, number 2. It now warns me that the one-touch setting data has been changed. If you select another style now without saving it, your data will be lost. So we must save. So we say yes. Now this is why I said you won't lose the factory settings. The save has taken us to not the preset style bank, but a user style bank. Now, ignore the fact I've already got some stuff in here already, but I'm going to say save here. And I'm going to call this My Bossa. So I'm going to delete that name and I'm going to call it My Bossa. For some reason I've done it all in capitals, but we won't worry about that. It'll stand out clearer. When I pressed OK, it took me back to the main screen. So how do we check whether it's saved? Well, I can now see in the name of the style, it's changed from Bossa Slow to My Bossa. So let's have a look. If we press, yes, it's in the user bank and it's called My Bossa. And let's just double check. If we go to one touch setting 1, we've still got our tenor sax, but in one touch setting 2, we've got my setting, which was the jazz flute. Now, the way I use this on Yamaha products is, if you look at this user bank, yes, I said, ignore the fact I've got a lot of rubbish in there where I've been testing things earlier. You could build up a whole new bank of your favourite styles with your favourite settings on. And it becomes your favourites bank, if you like, complete with style and 4 registrations for each style. Another little tip I will give you is make some general settings up. So if we were looking at a waltz or a bossa, don't always have a specific song in mind. Just make some settings up, say for a waltz, that would fit any waltz. So pianos, strings, maybe a solo, trumpet, maybe a clarinet, something like that, that you could just literally open your book, pick any waltz and use that as a setting. So you can do it one or two ways. You can either give it the name of a particular song if you want, or My Bossa just means I could use that now for loads of different bossas. Of course, you can adjust the tempo before you save it, but that makes a nice condensed version of the main registration memories. Give it a try. It's not difficult to do, and you won't spoil anything if you get something wrong, because if I go back to that original style now in the preset bank, Latin, and it was this one, slow bossa, exit, my jazz guitar is back there. So you will never ever lose the factory settings. So give it a go. Use one touch settings to create a favourites page on that user. I just thought, again, I'd take a couple of minutes out to show you something very, very different that we are incredibly excited by. This is a brand new Casio digital piano. Now, bear with me because I know a lot of you watching play a range of keyboards, but I also know that many of you have a piano type instrument as well. Casio is a company that many people are put off by the name. I usually say they're name blind about Casio. They still unfortunately, and I do mean this, unfortunately have that stigma of being involved with just calculators and watches. Casio is a huge music company as well. And over the years, if you remember back to one of our early episodes, they've pioneered, they're great innovators in the world of music. And this PXS 7000, the new flagship PXS piano, is no exception. Obviously, they've gone for a radical style. If you open a lot of these glossy magazines in the newsagents or on the shelves in the supermarket, look at modern homes in general. A lot of them are going for a different style of furniture now. Think of apartments, you know, that have been bought out of old factories and warehouses. Just imagine this. This is the sort of product, you know, look at a 20, 30-year-old television and look at a modern day television. But if you look at a 20 or 30-year-old digital piano and you look at a modern one, they haven't actually changed a great deal, but the surroundings in which we live have changed. So Casio, I think, have been very brave, but I also think they've been very shrewd in bringing out something with a totally different design. This actual finish on this one is called Harmonious Mustard, but they also do it in a white finish and they also do it in a black finish as well. You're going to have to trust me on this. The build quality of this instrument is on another level. This is, I would call this it's a modern style, but at the same time it's got a sort of retro feel about it as well. But the whole thing is solid, it's sturdy, and it's engineered to perfection. The way this thing fits together is quite remarkable, really. And it made me think, do you remember the TV advert that ran a few years ago about you can always tell it's a Volkswagen by the way the door closes? This reminds me very much of this. Might sound a silly thing, but I went to put the music rest in, and here's the first point. I hope on the video you can't actually see much of the music rest, because actually, even in the flesh here, it's been designed in such a way that it's not intrusive at all. You have a job to see that there's a music rest there. It's absolutely perfect. But when you go to fit the music rest in, it fits to perfection. The way the brackets on the stand work, it's all engineered to an incredibly high level. Most importantly, it's a superb piano. So it has a lovely wooden keyboard action in it, and it plays beautifully as a piano. And yes, we've got all the standard German, Austrian grands, things like that, but they've also been quite innovative in the way they've put whole banks of what they call classic piano and electric piano sounds in there. So I think, you know, maybe think of a song like Imagine, Lady Madonna, Let It Be. They've all got distinctive piano sounds in there, and they've actually put those sounds in here. If you think electric piano, things like Billy Joel, The Way We Were, not The Way We Were, Just The Way You Are. I'll get there in the end. I'll let you into a little secret. It's actually 7:45 in the morning. That's when I do most of the filming, so apologies if I go a bit brain dead occasionally. But yeah, an absolutely fantastic product with lovely touch buttons on that actually perfectly flat panel there. As I say, I know the bulk of you play a range of keyboards, but I think it's lovely to see that this world of keyboards and pianos is evolving, and it's lovely to see that after this problem time we've had with COVID, we've still got this ongoing microchip shortage, which has devastated our business a little bit in terms of what's being able to be produced. Exactly the same problem in the car trade and lots of tech products. But we are starting now to see new products coming along. Obviously, last month we did the Korg PA5X. I just wanted you to see this. I'm gonna leave this now because there's a heck of a draft coming from this window here. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed just looking at that, and watch out for the way Casio are going, because that's a company that's definitely on the rise. So I'm here with Andy Carvill, regular contributor to our Keysound TV, and we just thought it'd be nice to just sit and have a chat for a few minutes or so. I mean, we go back a long way, don't we?
We certainly do, Paul. Crikey.
If my memory serves me correct, it was about 1986.
I think it would be.
Yeah.
I think you just beat me to Yamaha, didn't you? You went first.
Yeah, I
to
left
Yamaha.
before you as well.
Yes,
There might
yes,
be we won't go into that, but yeah, I was already with Yamaha working when you came on board, I believe, as a rep.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we spent many happy days together.
We did indeed.
Theoretically
The fun
selling.
days.
Yeah,
Yes,
theoretically selling.
theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
The good old days.
But yeah, I moved on and went back into retail for various reasons, family reasons mainly. But you stayed with Yamaha, didn't you? I just wonder whether you'd tell our viewers where it led you down the career path.
Yes,
really.
certainly. Well, before Yamaha, of course, I was with 3 other companies.
Yeah.
Very briefly.
Yeah.
Back in the day, 1977.
Ooh. Now, was I born then? Yeah. Just.
I think you were, Paul. Yeah. 90s, I joined GEM.
Yep.
Believe it or not, as their national demonstrator.
Right.
I don't know how I got away with that. I don't know. Anyway, I joined GEM. Then I moved from GEM to Farfisa, and that was my first repping job.
Yep.
At Farfisa, where I used to work with dear old Paul Wise, of course.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah,
colleague for many years.
Yeah.
Then from Farfisa, I joined Technics.
Yeah.
I didn't stay long at Technics. If I'm honest with you, I didn't really enjoy the time too much at Technics. And one thing I learned at Technics was that the previous two, GEM and Farfisa, were obviously music companies.
Yeah.
And the thing about Technics back in that day, of course, when Technics instruments were being distributed, they weren't really a music company.
They were hi-fis and
they were a
microwaves and everything else.
Huge,
Yeah.
very professional electronics company.
Yeah.
But it didn't really match the music industry terribly well. So frankly, when the job came up at Yamaha, which for me was March 1987.
Oh,
so
right.
You were 86. I jumped on board wholly because it was obviously a very successful company, a very big company, but also a music company, a dedicated music organisation. And I suppose I spent a few years on the road, including some times with your good self, and climbed the greasy corporate pole over the years.
Yeah, then you went, did you not make a move to Casio then? After
Yes,
this? Yeah.
that was after 23 years at Yamaha. I joined Casio in 2009.
Right.
So I went into Casio with my eyes open because they were quite a similar company in some ways to Technics.
Yeah.
Not so much a music company, although they had a huge music heritage.
Yeah.
But they're a very large sort of electronics company, of course. Watches and calculators.
Well,
and
to be fair, that's a barrier we still come up against today.
Right.
Most people who walk through the shop door associate Casio still with watches and calculators, but when actually they're a huge music company now.
It is a huge music company. There's no doubt about it. So Casio was sort of halfway between the strict music companies that I worked for and also then Technics as well, which was this sort of electronics giant. Yeah. Not a music company at all. Casio was a music company, but they sort of fitted in differently.
Yeah.
I spent 7 years at Casio, in charge of the division. I was head of the division, so that was definitely a very commercial position. And one thing I found as you go through, even the greasy pole at Yamaha and Casio. You move further away from the instruments. You move further away from playing. For 7 years, I didn't really play anything.
No.
And then a great opportunity arose.
I was going to say, then you disappeared. Nobody could find out the whereabouts of Andy Carvill.
Good Lord. Well, we were in America, and my wife, bless her, secured a very high-flying job, literally in every sense of the word, in America. We moved to New York.
Yep.
We were living on Long Island, just outside New York. And frankly, I took the opportunity to take some early retirement, which also gave me time to get back into playing.
Yeah.
Which really was the sort of the first love. That was the first thing I got into this business about. Moved away from it just because of all the commercial pressures, and then finally had a chance to get back in.
Yeah. And hence we've come full circle.
Hence, here we
You're
are.
back
Here we are.
doing what you love to do, really, which is play. And,
Yes.
and I know you like the teaching thing, and that's where we've utilised you on Keysound TV.
Yes.
You put things over incredibly well.
Okay.
No, the
I'll take your word
feedback,
for that,
no,
but-
the feedback is excellent, believe me.
Right, right.
And as of this episode, we're going to see you play more sort of nice arrangements that you've put together.
Yeah.
And really, just to finish this little chat, it's just obviously when I met up with you again, suddenly find you playing a Korg instrument.
Yes.
What drew you to the PA 1000?
Okay, I have long been, for decades, an admirer of the Korg sound quality.
Yeah, yeah.
Whenever you hear a Korg being played, in whatever setting it is, it always sounds very good.
Yeah.
And frankly, when I was over in America, I saw a second-hand PA 4X for sale.
Yeah.
And I thought it was very cheap. So I thought, you know me. So I thought, well, it's got to be a good buy.
Yeah.
And so I've just enjoyed the Korg sound quality, experimenting with all the potential features that you have in here has been a great pleasure.
Yeah.
And when I came back to the UK, 2019, my wife jets between the two now.
Yep.
She's sort of coming and going between here and America. I got a PA 1000, which I just think is a fabulous instrument for a sort of mid-range sort of instrument.
Yeah.
Sound quality, features, and the way that it operates.
Yeah, I mean, it's mid-range probably in price, but I think you'll agree it's
not in terms of quality.
actually for what the majority of people want, there's everything on there.
It's a fantastic instrument.
And I say this with the greatest respect to you. I know you're not one for delving too deep into the technology side, but you've managed to just sit down and play it virtually as it is.
And it sounds great.
Out of the box. And yeah, some of the arrangements that you've done actually blow me away on this.
Well, I've delved a little bit more into the sequencer side of things recently. It's sort of a recent thing that I've sort of discovered and really enjoy doing that. And building up a sort of orchestral style arrangement is something I really enjoy.
So maybe in a future month's episode we could do that. We could sit and watch you put a little sequence together and just show us your approach to.
I think that's a great idea.
A little bit of multi-track recording.
I think that's a great idea.
All right.
Definitely do that.
Thanks for having a little chat with us.
Paul, lovely to see you.
All I can say with no envy at all is enjoy your retirement.
Yeah, I am.
I'll carry on working.
It's hard every day. It's hard, you know.
No, don't worry about me. I'll carry on working.
Good. That's what I like to hear.
But yeah, thanks ever so much to Andy.
Thank you, sir. Lovely to see you. Take care.
Thanks very much. Well, we're back to the Korg PA5X just for this next little segment. I want to show you a feature which has been improved upon beyond recognition, really, and that's the chord sequence section. A chord sequence is basically where the left-hand chords with the auto rhythms has already been input for you, or you can input it in. And there are so many ways you can use this, and it doesn't matter what level of player you are, there is a use for the chord sequence. If you're a complete beginner or more of a beginner and you struggle a little bit putting your chords together in time with here, you can input your chords first, and you can do them at a relatively slow speed that you're comfortable with. You can then speed it up afterwards, and you can adjust the tempo. If you're a more proficient player, let's say there's 2 or 3 chords in a little piece that you really struggle to get to, then again you can put that in, and slowly but surely you'll learn those chords, because you can still play over the top of a chord sequence. You can either play the same chords, or you could play a single note counter melody. I'll give you an example of that in a minute. So there are so many ways. The final way that I think is brilliant is when you take that out of the equation, you can then practice maybe some improvisation. Do you remember we've talked about this little thing, the pitch bend wheel? You can actually practice doing that without the need to keep diving back and changing chords. So I can think of lots and lots of uses for it. Let me show you how it works. Every single rhythm on the PA5X has a sample chord sequence put to it. So for example, if I go into Latin here and I go to Wonderful Bossa Nova, now I happen to know that that style is based on a beautiful Diana Krall, great jazz pianist. It's her arrangement of the jazz standard Swonderful, and she did it as this sort of laid back bossa nova. Now I've chosen the style. To find the sample chord sequence that's been put in, I need to go to the chords tab. Hopefully you can see it on the big screen. So we go there and it says Wonderful Bossa Nova chord sequence, but I still can't see any chords there at the minute. Well, to load it, I need to just press the sequence button here in the chord section. And lo and behold, up comes the chord sequence, and it's split up into the bars. It tells you what the chords are. And when you first glance at this, you might be quite glad that Korg have put this one in for you, because you look at some of the chords. B flat 9 with a sharpened fifth. Yeah, we can't all do that chord, but we might be able to do it slowly if we looked at a picture and that, yeah, we've got that, we've input it. Now we've took it back up to speed and we can play along to it. So that's the first thing you can do, is just use that chord sequence to play along with. So let's choose one of the keyboard sets. Yeah, I'm going to choose that nice little sort of echoey, breathy sax. That's nice. So all we need to do is press play and we're away. Lovely. That gave me chance to practice the pitch bend wheel there. I could have put a lower voice on and actually played the chords on top, and I could have cheated them, because when I get to those difficult chords, I could have just held back or just played the root note or something. Let me load another one. Let's go into a totally different category. I'm going to go into Moving Show, and I'm going to go to Spaghetti Western. Let's press exit. Again, we can see chord sequence, Spaghetti Western. How do we get the chords to come up? Well, we press the sequence button and that loads that particular sequence in. It's only a short snippet. I've listened to the chord sequence a few times. It's a fairly obvious one. It's the good, the bad and the ugly. So again, I could just play along with it. But what about if we did something a little bit different this time? First of all, I'm going to choose the sound I want. Yeah, the whistle, that's nice. I'm going to put the lower voice on and have a listen. That's given us a string sound. Now, I'm going to create effectively here an effect of like multi-tracking, because I'm just going to play single notes on the strings. Now, the simplest way to do it would be to just play the root note of the chord. So as it goes from D minor to G, back to D minor, just play D, G, and maybe back to a different D. And then it goes C, D minor, so we just play the root note C, back to the D, and so on. To make it a bit more interesting, what if we did D for the D minor, G for the G chord, and then on the next D minor, let's play another note out of a D minor chord. Well, there's an A, so let's go up from a G to an A, and that will lead us up nicely to the C, and then up again to the D. And we're building a nice little counter melody up. Maybe where we get to the G there, I'll play a B, because there is a B note in a G major chord. But all this time, the left-hand chords are going ahead as per the chord sequence that's been put in. So let's try it through first without the counter melody, and then listen to it with the counter melody. So it goes like this. Now with the counter melody. There we have got that nice double tracked effect, and it gives you chance. That will keep looping through. You can try as many different variations on that counter melody. You might choose a vocal sound instead of a string sound. It's great fun, but you're actually learning at the same time. So remember, every single rhythm style has a sample chord sequence with it, but there's also a lot more chord sequences. And how do we access them? Well, where it says spaghetti western next to chord sequence, let's just tap that in the screen. And just like we get with sounds and styles, whether it be on a Korg or a Genos, we have categories, and then we have pages of, in this case, examples of chord sequences. So if I went to the jazz category, for example, I've got Fly Me to the Moon. Nice song. Let's exit. To load the chord sequence for Fly Me to the Moon, we have to press the sequence button. And there is our nice chord sequence for Fly Me to the Moon. But we've got a problem here. We're still on Spaghetti Western. Now, these chord sequences are not linked to a rhythm. Before, we chose a rhythm which had a chord sequence linked to it. Now we've got a chord sequence which is independent of the rhythm. So I don't think I want to play Fly Me to the Moon with a spaghetti western. But what I can do now is go to the rhythm style. Now, Fly Me to the Moon, it could be a jazz swing, it could be a nice laid-back bossa nova. Let's go to jazz first, and we will choose medium swing quintet. That's going to work. Now I press just here and find our chord sequence we want, Fly Me to the Moon. How do we load it? We press the sequence button just there. So we've now got Fly Me to the Moon, medium swing quintet at 98 beats a minute. I'm going to speed it up just a little bit. I'm going to put it to about 110. I'm going to choose my sound. Yeah, jazz guitar, that's lovely. So we'll play our song. And there you go. What about if we wanted to play Fly Me to the Moon as a bossa nova? Let's just try it. Let's go to Sweet Bossa. Load our chord sequence for Fly Me to the Moon. and actually show it by pressing the sequence button. Now we've got Sweet Bossa at 122 beats a minute. Let's try it. It's given us a nice little sort of echoey horn sound there. That's nice. The other thing it gives you a chance to do, gives you a chance to practice a little bit of improvisation there with the right hand, because you've taken part of the problem, if you like, out of the equation to start with. Now, that's all well and good, but it might be nice, wouldn't it, to record your own chord sequences. So how do we do that? Well, it's ever so simple. When you're on that chord page, look, we have a button here that says record. We press it. And having chosen our rhythm first and our tempo, you just literally play the chords in time with your sheet music copy. So let's just go ahead and record. We press start. We'll just do that as a short clip. Now, when I press stop, panic sets in. You think you've lost it because it's gone off the screen. No, it hasn't. It's gone into a temporary memory. Like most things, we now need to make a save before we go any further. So we go to our little 3 lines at the top, and there is an option, save chord sequence to library. Yeah, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to call it, very inventive this, example. That took a lot of thinking about. There we go. Obviously, normally you would give it the name of the tune. And where's it going to save? It's going to save to user. And this user is where we save, as the name suggests, all our own things. So I'm going to save it. Destination already exists. That's because I was practicing earlier for this bit of video. So I'm going to say yes. You wouldn't normally see that. And again, you look at the screen and you think, hang on, still can't see it. Well, that's because we need to go into our database, if we want to call it that, of chord sequences. Well, we've got factory, but I want the user one. And there it is. It's called example. If I press that and exit and load the sequence in, there is the chord sequence we've just put in. It is that easy to do it. I could have recorded that ever so slowly and then speeded it back up before we actually make the save. I can bring a chord sequence in just for a middle 8 of a tune. I'll give you one classic example and then I'm going to play one final chord sequence on here. When we all used to back cabaret many years ago, you used to dread if a singer came up with a song like Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, because the middle 8 is notoriously difficult. It seems to bear no relation to the rest of the tune. The chord sequence is not an easy one to remember. You could just put the chord sequence, for example, for the middle section of Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, and you could play and then just bring the chord sequence in just for the middle 8 and then switch it back off again. So it doesn't have to be the whole song. Now I'm just going to finish with one more, because we've talked about chord sequences to specific songs at the moment, but if you look at the factory ones, there are also some, let's call them generic chord sequences. So I'm going to go into blues, and I'm going to go into 12 major classic 1. So it's a 12 bar blues in a major key. Exit, and we press our sequence button. And there it is, a simple 12 bar blues. I think Andy's talked about this 12 bar blues in a previous episode. That is the classic 12 bar blues sequence. But I don't really want to play 12 bar blues to a bossa nova. Now, the beauty of the factory chord sequences, and indeed your user chord sequences, they are just a chord sequence. They are not in any way linked to a particular rhythm. The first ones I showed you were because we press the rhythm and that rhythm has a chord sequence linked to it. But these, that is just a chord sequence. I could play any rhythm backing I want to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right back to square one. I know I'm going to be playing some blues, so yep, let's use blues shuffle. And we press exit. And now I'm going to load in the chord sequence I want to go with that particular rhythm. So I'm going to choose the one 12 bar major classic. And we exit and we load it up by pressing the sequence button. Now we've got our classic 12 bar blues with a blues shuffle at 122 beats a minute. Let's choose a sound. Perfect. Nice little jazz organ sound. I can change the sound because this will keep looping through forever and a day. And this is a great chance now to practice some nice right hand blues phrases, and you can practice them as many times as you want. Doesn't matter if you go wrong, the chord sequence will carry on, and because it highlights where you are on the chord sequence, you can pick it back up. So let's finish with this one. Classic 12 bar blues goes like this. I don't think I need to go on, but it's absolutely fantastic. I could have maybe put a nice little piano sound over the top there in the back and joined in with some chords as well. It is an absolutely fantastic feature, however you choose to use it. So that's chord sequence on Korg PA5X. So that's it. That's a wrap for another episode. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you found some of the hints and tips useful, and I hope you've enjoyed the music along the way. Don't forget our 2 special Yamaha Discovery Days on the 11th and 12th of November. You will be very, very welcome, and if you have any opportunity at all to come down, don't miss it because it promises to be a great couple of days. I will try and set the camera up and we'll give you a little taster of what's gone on for those of you who can't make it down. Special thanks to Andy for doing a little bit extra this week, unfortunately due to Michael not being very well, but I look forward to being back with you all again next month. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and bye for now.